into fundamentals of faith-based housing development and provide an explanation of the technical assistance opportunities that will be made available to them. Next, we will have a full-day workshop. It will be a faith-based development workshop that we will be able to then provide additional information to those organizations that are interested in moving forward. Talk about affordable housing fundamentals, to develop models of faith-based properties such as ground lease, joint ventures, and nonprofit partnerships. Organizational readiness. Is the organization up to speed where they need to be to entertain and consider a venture of this magnitude? Look at site feasibility, zoning, parking, infrastructure needs. And what are the options for financing? Low-income housing tax credit, local and state funds, philanthropic sources, as well as other mixed income models. Then we'll talk about the partnerships necessary to carry out a venture such as this, the neighborhood engagement that is necessary, that the churches have to make sure that the neighbors are in line with what they're proposing. All the congregations that decide to move forward be invited to participate in the next phase. Phase 2 is the partnership readiness, which is an 8-session webinar series of training and technical assistance, which will be designed to prepare the organizations to engage in development of affordable housing. Organizations that complete this phase will then be able to apply for the next phase of training and support. Phase 3, which will be the development pathway, is where the organizations move from determining whether they are viable to pursue this and to talk about specific projects. That is at that level where the organizations will be able to contact Mark and his team to talk about specific projects. As you can see, there's a progression to make sure that the organizations have the capacity to move forward. And it's because, again, this is a major undertaking. Once they go through that process of the training, meeting with our city staff to look at the various resources that are available to them, then the entities can proceed to phase 4, which is providing additional technical assistance. This is where you're at the point now of project execution. So, in essence, we have an agreement with an organization that is very experienced in doing this work. Within the next 2 weeks, we'll be meeting to set out a plan for execution. Our first informational session will take place within 90 days. The major faith-based development workshop will occur once we have had an opportunity to meet, so that date has not yet been determined. I'm available. We are all available to answer any questions that you may have.
Committee members, we have about 15 minutes. Councilmember Driscoll.
Thank you, and thanks to all of you for giving your input based on your expertise. I really appreciate that. David, this question might be for you. This, or maybe George, maybe it was you who said that the house of worship has to remain operational.
Yeah, that's part of the new mandatory version of YIGB, yes.
What if the church has already closed? So it's still a church property, but it isn't operating. We have an example of that.
Yes.
Like from the past,
Yep.
not under YIGB, but the place where the Bayou Court Apartments sit right now used to be a church, but that church was shut down and abandoned long before a shovel went in the ground. What do you do then?
I think your question is going to be the same question that developers and churches have. The statute is not clear on that, and as Mark said, how would you compel, in the case, even if it was open and they wanted to close and build a smaller or move into a different space, how would you compel a house of worship to be operational, and then what happens to development on the property if for some reason it has to close.
Is your question more about there used to be a church here, but it's been closed for a few years, but now
Yeah.
they want, but it's still owned by the faith partner, and now they would like to do a housing project?
Yes, and, you know, in some cases, the physical church is still there.
Right, so both versions of the statute, the optional and the mandatory, both state that there must be an active house of worship. In the case of our optional one, there has to be an active house of worship at the time the project is proposed. There is no back dating to how long that's been there. The state's mandatory version says there must be an active house of worship that has been operating on the site for at least 10 years prior to applying for the house.
Okay.
I think their goal there might be to avoid, you know, you can start a church under any kind of, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So somebody, a shrewd developer, could potentially
Right.
form a religious,
Yeah, the 10-year thing
buy a
makes
property and
sense.
say, okay, you know, we're having
Yeah.
service, there's only 3 people here.
Yeah, the 10-year minimum, I was just thinking
Yeah.
of a church where there's still a church, but it has not been operating. So this stuff only applies to properties with churches that are active.
As the statutes are currently written, that is,
Okay, and others will go the way the guys did with Bayou Court and do it that way. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Councilmember Givens?
Thank you, and thank you all so much for your hard work on this. I do have a couple of questions, so I'll try to be quick, and hopefully you will too. How do we define, or how has the state defined, what is a religious organization?
So I would need to go back and get the exact language, but the YIGB statute references an already existing definition. So I can search for that and provide that for you.
Yeah, because I have questions about, organizations, Catholic charities, pregnancy centers, Church of Scientology. I'm just saying, who, qualifies as a religious organization?
I can comment that we did recently have a developer ask about a property that does not have a house of worship on it, but it is faith-owned and operates a thrift store on it, from a faith-based institution. That, in my understanding of the statutes, does not qualify for YIGB because, again, both versions, both statutes require that there's an active house of worship at the time of an application. So unless they're holding services in that thrift store every Sunday, as a multiple use, then that wouldn't qualify. But as far as how you define a religious institution, David's correct. It references a definition elsewhere, and he'll be able to find that for you.
So I have so many questions about this because there's so much vagueness, in the statute, and I think we need more clarity. And I don't know if this is where legal comes in or what. But first of all, what is a religious organization? Secondly, how long does this organization have to have conducted religious worship services? Can they just have popped up last week and said, hey, we had prayer meeting, and now they're, qualified? I don't know, and I still have questions, and I don't know. I think you all have the same questions I do.
Well, and to that question, under our optional program that we've adopted, there is no requirement for how long they have been operating, just that there is an active house of worship at the time they apply. Under the mandatory version, it requires a 10-year track record of an active house of worship. So that would answer at least that one question, but you're correct. The statute is vague in a lot of areas. Every year we strive to get more clarity on these things at the state level so that it is more clearly defined.
Gotcha. And if I can ask you, Mark, and first of all, I want to thank you. I hosted a conversation on this topic, and I know you, Reverend Irby, and Mr. Smith, you all were present. I appreciate you all and other staff members that were there. Thank you so much. Just trying to corral the faith-based community around this topic. And being a member of the clergy, I understand how important this conversation is, but I also understand how confusing it can be to someone who does not have any experience in development. And so I'm grateful that the city is leading this charge, something I've been looking for a long time. You talked about 45 possible organizations or parcels. I just want to get clarity there, that were greater than 3 acres. I believe that was correct number 45, but I can't remember if it was organizations or parcels. I just want to...
That was parcels.
Parcels.
So of the total number of parcels that the assessor's site identifies as faith-owned in the city, there were a total of 260 qualifying parcels. 45 of those 260 were over 3 acres and would qualify for the mandatory version.
Are you able to, Mark, provide us with a list of who the owners of those 45 parcels are? That would be great. I really appreciate that. And then also, on that topic, the interests. Have we started those conversations? I know Reverend Irby, and I'm sure he's already on it, but what has the conversations looked like with some of these faith-based partners? Because I'm sure some of them have questions, about leasing versus selling. Some of them don't want to do multifamily housing. They may want to do a triplex or a duplex or a quad. I don't know. I just want to know about approximately, and you don't have to give me names, how many churches are ready to just come to that phase 1 meeting in 90 days and put the shovel in the ground hopefully soon.
I mean, I can only speak to, the conversations I've had with parties interested in utilizing YIGB to develop housing. And as I mentioned, virtually all of my conversations begin with either a developer or a real estate broker. It's rarely, I'm not sure if I've ever had the faith partner initiate the conversation so far. I think that's just a sign that this training is needed. Faith partners who many probably haven't even heard that this is out there yet or understand what it means potentially for them. And then they certainly don't likely have experience in housing development and so on. So, the hunters are already out there, and I don't mean to paint them in a bad light. There's a lot of good developers looking to use this to do great things in the community and partner in a responsible way with the faith community to live out their mission, if you will, if they have that opportunity. But it's important that the faith community be educated and trained, hopefully prior to entering into an agreement. So far, my conversations have been pretty much solely with developers and real estate brokers who are, in some cases, talking to faith partners, but not always. A lot of them are just trying to figure out themselves what's in this process. When we find a partner in a property, how do we go about pursuing this?
So have we as a city approached any faith-based partners to gauge their interest and to see who might be willing to start?
I have not approached them. They have approached me, as well as Reverend Irby. And I think that is what prompted us to expedite moving forward with this training, because that, again, is not their primary line of work. And we wanted to make sure that, and I'm not an expert in housing development of this magnitude, of course, but we wanted to make sure that we were able to bring the subject matter experts to them to get those questions answered. And I think we've landed in a pretty good place to be able to help them out. So yes, we have not reached out because we wanted to make sure that we had things lined up timely. And it would be unfair to promise something and we did not have our schedule already identified. So we're in a better place now to start those conversations and have additional marketing and outreach. And again, that's because of Reverend Irby's many years in the ministry will add a lot of value to that effort.
I just want to close by, again, thanking you all and offering my support. I already have at least a dozen churches that are ready to start working. Now, are they able? I don't know. That's where you all as the experts, especially you, Mark, will come and play to help educate them, because I don't think it's too soon to start educating, too soon to start that conversation and just laying the foundation, YIGB 101, are you prepared? Are you ready? A lot of folks don't understand the intricacies of denominations, going through the Methodist Church, the AME Church, having to go before the boards and, getting the Catholic diocese, approval. Like, that is a complicated process. And the longer we wait, then the longer the process is drawn out. So I just want to make sure, again, if we can start conversations, just conversations, and educating them on this is going to take some time. Let's be realistic. Kind of setting a realistic parameter here, I think it'll be beneficial to all of us, because as you said, they're ready, but we just want to make sure they understand all the work that's required. So thank you so much, Chair.
And Chair, if I may, just want the definition that the statute references: religious institution means any church, synagogue, or established physical place for worship. at which nonprofit religious services and activities are regularly conducted and carried on. So that is the term. And talking with the bill sponsor, this is something she thought about a lot. You know, I don't know if everybody knows, one of the largest private landowners in the state of Florida is the Mormon Church. And that's not a critique of them, but the intention was not to create huge 100-acre swaths of land that was owned by one church. That contiguous parcel and house of worship is very intentional language to make sure that this is truly a cohesive faith community.
And I'm glad you brought that up. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they own multiple parcels of land across the city.
Yeah.
And I think, again, they may be a church that we haven't considered approaching. And I want us to make sure we're having conversations with all religious partners. So thank you so much, Chair.
Councilmember Harding, you have anything?
I'm good. I appreciate the work. Thank you very much.
Okay. I'll wrap us up quickly. I have two things I want to mention. I guess this might be a little ahead of ourselves, but have y'all envisioned what the process would look like for, say, if a church like makes an agreement with a developer, is working on an agreement with the developer, they're going to have to talk to your department, right, Mark? Like, before we do anything. So concerns around exploitation, maybe bad deals for a religious institution, you'll have eyes on it pretty quickly, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have any control over a developer and a faith partner.
Of course.
You know, entering into some kind of an agreement outside of the city. However, any project that's proposed, you know, would have to be submitted to the city for site plan approval and ultimately for permitting. So obviously the project, you know, we would first have to approve it as a qualified YIGB project under all the things you heard here. And then once that's the case, really both versions, our local option, optional version, and the mandatory version, what it really does is says, if you qualify for the basic criteria as a YIGB site, then your project falls under Live Local Act. And in the case of the mandatory version, it says that they would have to dedicate 40% of the units at 120 AMI or below, and they would get the benefits under Live Local Act on density, height, et cetera. Under our version, they can utilize both the Live Local Act or our Chapter 17.5 pathway. And technically, they could do that under the mandatory version as well, which has some different parameters and some greater flexibility. So bottom line is, we'd first approve them that they are qualified under YIGB, then we would look at their site plan and make sure that that can be approved based on what they're proposing, and ultimately, they'd have to, you know, get their permitting and stuff before anything could be built.
Okay, I guess I was asking that so that I could get some sort of understanding of what's possible as to if something was brought to you all and there was red flags. Maybe it did qualify, but there's red flags around the relationship between the church and the developer. I'm not sure that we have to hash that out today, but I'm assuming you would keep it in mind, and there'd be something there that could at least let you advise organizations as to what standards are, what a standard kind of agreement looks like, is what I would say, just so that there's like some sort of backing.
Yeah.
But we don't have to get into it. We're out of time today. The last thing I'll say is you mentioned it. You looked at all these parcels that could potentially qualify. You could give us the names of the landowners and whatnot. And so I just want to encourage y'all to actively reach out to them as this process goes on, like the education process goes on. Especially those larger landowners, actively reach out to them and tell them this is what we have going on. And then, you know, any possible way you can send a letter or something to all of the landowners that this impacts, to do that, because we know who this is impacting, and so there's no reason for us to not directly reach out to them. So that's what I wanted to encourage.
That is a part of our strategy moving forward. Now we have an agreement with our consultant. We're able now to actively market to every property owner within the parameters of the city of St. Petersburg to notify them of our plan.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you all so much. I'm glad we're able to have this conversation. I'm not sure what it looks like going forward is what I'll say right now. But I think that based off of the language in the new business item, I'll go back and look at it. decide if maybe we can keep it, and so that after this contract's been executed, we can have another conversation about how it's gone. If it's appropriate, I'll do that. If not, then we can put in a new item later on. But I'm really grateful for it, and I look forward to having conversations in the future about this topic as well.
Thank you.
All right.
Vice Chair Foot, if I may quickly, so 1389, would be the new mandatory provision of YIGB, which is part of Local 4.0. It is not become law yet. I don't know, Mr. Thompson.
I should have said that.
Yeah, so there is a slim possibility that may not go forward and become law. You probably know more about your ear to the ground about what's going on with that. There's been no motion on it since mid-March, has not been transmitted to the governor. But just as a heads up, that will not affect the optional provision that the city has already put into its code.
Wonderful. Thank you for that clarification. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, we'll call today's Housing, Land Use, and Transportation Committee adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chair.
We have adjourned TV. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Move it, body, move it, baby. Move it, body.
My name is Niveen Naruz, and I'm a lead chemist in the Environmental Compliance Division Laboratory. Our lab here is a monitoring lab, so we tested the water to make sure it meets the standards. It's Water Resources Department, so we test all the water resources within the city and outside the city to make sure it's safe for consumption or for recreational reasons, and make sure the community is safe and the environment in general is safe. After all, everyone needs water. So we test the drinking water from all over the city on a monthly basis. So every month we cover all the areas in the city. And also we do beach monitoring. We do the beaches on a weekly basis. We found that we have more control over the data, and we produce more reliable data in the lab here than the private labs. We make sure that all the water in the city is safe for you, your family, your pet, the animals, the aquatic life, to protect the water. I feel I'm giving back to the community as well. I do a lot of troubleshooting and problem solving. I'm like a scientist and detective as well, so it's very interesting. I really like my job because it actually has a real effect on people's lives. You know, like no one can live without water.
Hey guys, Ken Wells here again on our Sunrunner tour. Today I'm with Catherine Woods, who was the artist that did so much of the work that you'll see at the stops. Thank you for joining us, Catherine.
Oh, my pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about what the art means.
Absolutely. Since St. Pete is such a mural city, if you took all the glasses out of all the shelters and put them together, it kind of looks like a mural, a continuous mural. If you take the glasses and where they are at all the 16 stops, they all relate to the neighborhood. It's like the welcoming front porch to the community in the neighborhood that it's in.
What's the message you want to convey to folks who might be from out of town that see that?
I just want them to feel the joy of St. Petersburg. The colors are joyful, the way the sun comes through it's a very happy thing, and I just want them to feel that.
And what drew you to this project in the first place? How'd you become
Oh my gosh,
involved?
how could you say no to that big canvas? There's 2 glasses per station, and each one is 5 foot by 7 foot, 16 stations, so that's a lot of glass, and that's a lot of chance to get a message across and do a lot of beautiful color.
Well, thank you. It's beautiful art.
My pleasure.
And it tells the story of St. Petersburg.
It does.
Thank you, Catherine.
My pleasure.
I came to printmaking actually as a writer. I was getting my creative writing degree from Florida State. I took a class that was called Book Structures because I was really interested in the idea of self-publishing and just discovered a whole world of this kind of like tactile, experimental, hands-on medium that I wasn't really aware existed before. So we do 2 types of printmaking here, letterpress printing and risograph printing. It looks like a copy machine, but it actually functions like screen printing where you're layering colors one at a time. So it's color separated. It's really great to have the opportunity to be out at different markets and events to sell our work. Since we don't have really a retail space, it's our opportunity to get our work out there and also be there to kind of tell folks about the process. And there's kind of this excitement when they pick up this card and you can tell that a hand made it. It's a small but mighty, kind of like print-loving community here in St. Pete. We've been able to connect with everyone from local bookstores to local authors and poets that are interested in publishing their own work and making zines, to just art education groups. We're able to kind of connect with all different types of people and excite them about this process. And then this lever here, you press it with your thumb. We're really grateful to have such a supportive community here in St. Pete for local businesses. People get really excited at events, and there's all these fun little mom and pop shops and artists selling their work, things that you can't find in other cities, right? It makes St. Pete very unique. We've been able to make a lot of great connections and collaborations with our fellow local businesses.
I look at Woodlawn as probably the most neighbor-friendly, kid-friendly neighborhood that I've ever lived in. It's a wonderful neighborhood to grow up in. I wish I was a kid growing up in this neighborhood.
It's a real family-oriented community, super close to downtown, and it's just kind of one of those picturesque, nice, quaint little neighborhoods.
I think what was really cool about the neighborhood is it's different compared to a lot of the other neighborhoods where part of it is on the circle. So as soon as we drove in on the neighborhood looking for a house, I just knew that this neighborhood had kind of some extra character to it.
Woodlawn has got a circular style to it, design to it, and you can see from some of these old pictures that there really is a circle or an oval to Woodlawn neighborhood.
My favorite part of the day is driving home. You turn onto our street from MLK, and there's beautiful oak trees, blooming crepe myrtles, and then there's a park. We have a park just at the end of our street. So here in Woodlawn, we have 3 public parks within our community.
We use those parks a lot for our garage sale in the fall. There's cookouts that go on in those neighborhood parks, and they